What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here, Fantasy Alarm, and boy, oh boy, it's here. We got real drafts this weekend. Not like we haven't been doing real drafts this entire time, right? But best ball drafts don't quite count. And some of these industry leagues, especially the ones done really early, Scott Fishbowl with all the crazy rules, all this stuff, might not count as much. To me, there's two types of serious leagues. Always the number 1 league in my heart will be my big hometown league. I don't care how many Scott Fish Bowls and, I've done $2,000 buy-in drafts for high stakes drafts. The league that's most important to me is the lag. That draft is tonight. That draft's tonight. Hopefully none of my hometown buddies stumble across this video, get all my sleeper picks, though I can kind of outmaneuver them anyway. But what we're doing today, we're not doing sleeper picks. We've done sleepers, we've done the hype players, we've done our flag plants, we've done busts, we've done all that. Today, going into one of the biggest weekends of drafts. It's this weekend, it's next weekend. Those are the weekends here. I'm going to go through my value picks, the core players to my teams. Like all year long, these have kind of been the core players. These are the players I plan to draft at value. Doesn't mean they're super sexy, doesn't mean they're super exciting. They're players that I truly believe in and I think we can get a good value. And I know we can get a good value on them at FFPC because all month I've kind of been combing through the ADP over there, comparing it to different platforms using the Fantasy Alarm ADP tool. You can go in there and look at the composite ADP from 7 different platforms, and you can compare the individual ones. You can look at FFPC and see where guys are going on NFFC, Sleeper, ESPN, Underdog, Yahoo. Doesn't matter. We got them all in there, right? So what I've been doing is I've been combing through, finding where the convergence of players I like and guys that are cheaper on this platform than other platforms. So that's what this is going to be. It's going to be a lot of players that I legitimately really like. A couple guys will be in here that I might not love, but I have to mention because I think they're okay picks and they're just crazy cheap on FFPC. I'll make sure to square away who's who and what's what as we do this. Thank you guys for hanging out, trickling in. I see Mile High Luke, Angie, Toronto Dave, Albert, Brad. What's happening? Thank you guys for popping in. So I've got, you know what? The graphics department stepped up this week. We have some graphics. Sometimes I just get on here and rant for an hour, which is fine. But this week we have some graphics. Check it out here for those watching at home. Let me see if I can get this into. Yeah, let's do that. Let's put me in the corner. How about that? Is that all right with you guys? Let me know. I can do some different stuff here. Uh, Nope, that's not doing it. All right, I'm putting myself in the corner for this one. Maybe I'll pop up big screen if I have something big to say. But let's get into it here. Here we go. Yeah, Scampers, I'm with you. Home league draft tonight. This is the big one for all the marbles, for all the bragging rights, right? Again, I've done a bunch of FFPC ones last Friday. If you want to see an actual draft, me and Theo did one on FFPC. I do the $2,000 main event over there. But my hometown league, man, that's the one. We've been doing it since 2001. My team name in that league has been the Wild Thornberries for over 20 years. Just bonkers business. So here we go. Let's get in on some values here. Anyone that's been around this channel knows number one with a bullet in terms of value for me is Kyler Murray. I don't take the first quarterback off the board, especially in my hometown league. Some of these other sites like FFPC are predictable to some degree, right? Where like, okay, if I take a QB here, the other QBs are going to go. In your hometown league, you never know. Like the worst thing that can happen is you take the first QB off the board and no one takes one for another like 4 rounds. We had that happen in a mock draft earlier this year on Fantasy Alarm's website. John and Pemba, he has Jalen Hurts as his top QB, which I don't disagree with. He took him in like the second round, and the next quarterback didn't go until the 6th round. No matter how you slice it, if that happens, you're bleeding value. It's a big reason I don't love taking the top quarterback or the top tight end in formats where I'm not super familiar with the ADP. So like underdog, FFPC, whatever, that you kind of know you're getting the value. In your hometown league, it all goes out the window. So I really don't like taking the first QB or even really the second one. I will consider guys like Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, but Kyler Murray, number one, to me, he gives you the pathway to QB1 upside while also getting him without having to take a top 5 overall quarterback, right? Anthony Richardson obviously gives you similar upside, but we're seeing some things on him in terms of throwing. With Kyler Murray, If you take all quarterbacks of all time in fantasy football, all time, going back forever, and sort them by fantasy points per game, he is fourth on that list, right? So this is a guy we know is going to scramble around. They he got it done last year with Trey McBride. I mean, in the games he played, they were scoring more points per game than the Jaguars, more points per game than the Chiefs, and just barely fewer than the Texans. So we know this guy can ball, and we know he can ball for fantasy football. I don't care if he plays video games or if he's first in line at the chow line and whatever. I don't care about that. I care about him being on the field and being the QB and being a QB1 in fantasy. So Kyler Murray for me, absolute smash there. The other value picks that I like in two QB, or if you're going like a yin yang quarterback, like let's say you miss out on all the guys that have crazy mobile upside, right? And I tweeted it out earlier today, retweeted it, that I did a little study. If you run the ball 90 times, it's very hard for you not to be a QB1. That's why people go after Richardson, they go after Kyler Murray. We've seen it with, Josh Allen threw for like just barely over 3,000 yards, 58 completion percentage. He was QB6. Justin Fields, 2022, threw for like 2,200 yards. He was QB6 because he was running all over the place. Tom Brady that year threw for 4,000, nearly 4,600 yards, and he was QB12. Like mobile upsiding, it's a reason it's the Konami code. It's kind of cheating, right? Uh, After Murray, what I do is I'll take like a safe quarterback that I can start week one, like a Matthew Stafford. He's got a couple good games on the schedule, nice easy ones, good ones for fantasy, right? He comes out and he plays the Lions and then he plays the Cardinals, right? Those are some point scoring weeks right there. So Matthew Stafford, safe play, and then I'll pair him with an upside play. Deshaun Watson, to me, I know people don't like him. I know people like to root against him. That's absolutely fine. I care about fantasy points. If I'm on FFPC, one of the high stakes places where I can win $1 million in a lot of these tournaments, I only care about fantasy points. I don't care about who is nice to fans. I don't care who has pending lawsuits. I don't care who has a bad contract. Like I just care about fantasy points. So I will draft Deshaun Watson. I'm not worried about his arm soreness. Like he's going to be out there, and when he is, again, just like Kyler Murray, sort players all time by fantasy points per game. He's third. So the list goes: Patrick Mahomes 1, Josh Allen 2, Deshaun Watson 3, Kyler Murray 4. That's all-time fantasy points per game. And Watson on that list has like 20 and change fantasy points per game. Last year, even with games with a broken shoulder, he was averaging over 18, like a mere 2 points a game away from being the guy he's been. Don't be surprised when that guy is good. All right. Aaron Rodgers is an example of a player that I'm not usually drafting, but he has to be mentioned because in my research over on FFPC, he's going he's going cheaper than he is on virtually any other platform, based on the order that they go in and kind of based on ADP, depending on the platform again. Like a lot of these guys are going to go cheaper in general on FFPC because it's tight end premium. So you always got to add like 7 tight end spots, 8, depending on tight ends they get pushed up from where they normally would. But even then, Aaron Rodgers goes behind guys like Stafford and even Baker Mayfield at times, which makes him a value. So if you like Aaron Rodgers, I don't necessarily love him, but if you are in, FFPC is the place to draft him. And if you want to draft on FFPC, use promo code Coop if you've never played before, and they'll give you uh, 25 bucks when you deposit $35 or more. You hit that QR code that's right here, and they can get you all set up with that. It links right over there. You can get in there. I mean, again, we love drafting over there for a few reasons. I mean, one is the rake is if you want to do high stakes, the rake is pretty good, right? Some of these other sites, if you try and boost them up to high stakes, the rake is still pretty high and they're collecting a lot of money on you. The other is that one of the big ones for me, honestly, is that we want to prove that we're good at this game, right? We know we're good at this game. We win our hometown league all the time, but nobody cares that I win the lag or that I came in top 4 in every single one of my Yahoo leagues last year. It's like, that's fine. You know what I mean? But if you win a FFPC main event or the FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship, that means something. Like that, you put that in your profile on Twitter and say, "Hey, I'm the main event champion on FFPC." And when you're arguing with people and they're like, "Who the heck is this guy?" and they click on your profile and they see that, they're like, "Oh man, wait a second." I see that happen all the time with Chad Schroeder. Shout out to a all-time, maybe the best high stakes player of all time. People will argue with him and they'll be like, "Oh, who the heck is this guy?" And then they'll click his profile and they'll be like, "Oh my goodness, this guy is legitimately an absolute shark, one of the great champions in fantasy football. So to me, like if you want to take your game to the next level and prove that you are truly not just good but great, then FFPC is a place to do that. And again, if you use promo code Coop, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. So Aaron Rodgers is not really a guy I'm drafting. Drake May, I absolutely will draft. I mentioned the if you run the ball 90 times, you have a hard time not being a QB1 in fantasy. I went and basically I set the parameters to at this. I set the parameter at 90 carries and playing 16 games, right? And that way it encapsulates all the seasons before the 17 game season. But so if you essentially play the full season and you run the ball at least 90 times, I went through the list of quarterbacks and checked out the year that they put those numbers up in and compared them. There was only one of those players that didn't finish as a QB1 in fantasy. Just one. It was 2014 Colin Kaepernick. He ran the ball a ton. He played the whole year. He did not finish as a QB1 in fantasy. Every other one did. And the names on the list might surprise you. And that's why it makes us interested in guys like Anthony Richardson and Drake May. You don't actually have to be good to be a QB1 in fantasy. Vince Young, as a rookie, was a QB1 in fantasy because he ran the ball a ton. Tyrod Taylor has QB1 seasons. Justin Fields is the most recent example. Daniel Jones throwing, 15, 10 touchdown passes a season. You don't have to be good. Willingness to run is the number one indicator of the mobile upside quarterback. That's it. 5 or 6 carries a game will get you to 90, right? It does. I know it's kind of a glitch in the matrix. I think that maybe we got to find a way to make this game more statistical. I don't necessarily want it to be like anyone you guys play fantasy baseball know that like when you get into these roto leagues and people start using like OBP and all this stuff, like these guys have to legitimately be good players. They can't just only be one trick ponies. Whereas in fantasy football, it is kind of a loophole on many formats. You can be a one trick pony if you're willing to run the football. Drake May had a season in college where he ran the ball 284 times. Okay. Jaden Daniels ran the ball 286 times, and everyone's like, oh my God, he's incredible. Oh my God, I love him. Like Drake May should be getting a lot of attention too because he's the starter. He's going to run. Like people look at Josh Allen. Josh Allen ran a 4.75 40. Okay. And he runs for 700 yards a year in this league. Drake May ran a 4.55. Drake May is faster than Jalen Hurts, right? Jaden Daniels ran a 4.5. Drake May ran a 4.55. Drake May is faster than Jalen Hurts. He's faster than Jaden Daniels. He's bigger than Jalen Hurts. He's bigger and faster than Jalen Hurts. Like this guy could run all over the place if he gets the job. We watched him in the preseason game. He just walked in the end zone. It wasn't that hard. Like that's the thing about being a quarterback with the RPO and all this stuff. If you're willing to run, you can put up good weeks. Even Sam Howell, who runs like a 5 flat, he had some fantasy relevant weeks because he would run the ball 4 or 5 times. So Drake May, if he gets the job, he's the guy. And then, of course, the picture there, Russell Wilson. Look, say what you will about Russ. And again, it's a riskier pick in best ball where you can't drop him. I'm still drafting him there. But there's a real possibility that this guy inherits a team that won 10 games last year, and he's a starting quarterback for that team for the entire season. And Mike Tomlin, who has never gone under 500, and him have a decent year. And last year, he threw 26 touchdown passes, ran for 3. That's 29 touchdown passes. That's more than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes played one more game than him, and he scored more touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes in PPR points per game was QB 14, and Russ was QB 15. Russ was the QB 14 last year, missing 2 games. Like, there's a world where Russ jumps on this team, and he's good, and he keeps the job all year, and he's a fantasy relevant quarterback. Not only that, I mean, especially in 2 QB leagues, but he could even be a QB1. Like, does Mike Tomlin, like, let's say Mike Tomlin puts on his Mike Tomlin glasses, right? Could you see Mike Tomlin going out there and being like, okay, Mike Tomlin style. Yeah, let's take our starting quarterback here out and run the Wildcat. Like, no, that's not what he does. I guess maybe they will mix in a package or so, but that doesn't really seem like the kind of guy that Tomlin is. Tomlin seems like the kind of guy that when he gets a starting quarterback that is good, like Russell Wilson could potentially be, he just has the starting quarterback that's good and he keeps winning games. That's why we like Mike Tomlin. The standard is the standard. So I could see a world where Russell Wilson is rock solid. Again, QB 14 last year in a situation where he got benched. Like It could be much better this year. And Justin Fields goes QB 27. He goes QB 32. I don't make no sense. It don't make no sense to me. Toronto Dave, what's up, dude? Pats are back. Let's go. All right, let's move on. Next position here. We're going to cover all four of the main ones. I'm not going to get into defenses. I'm not going to get into kickers. If you want the kicker stuff, go check with Linda at Lindellians on Twitter. For defenses, on FFPC, the cheat code is to draft a defense that plays either the first Thursday or Friday game. The reason being you get a free look. The big tournament doesn't start until Sunday because it doesn't start until Sunday because they want to allow people to draft in high stakes drafts out there in Vegas. So what they do is it's kind of crazy. I mean, it seems ridiculous, but what they do is you can change your lineup after those games are over. All you have to do is have your lineup in for Sunday because they want everybody out there to hang out and go to Vegas and draft on Saturday and do all these crazy drafts, and then everyone watches the games together on Sunday, which is awesome. I will admit that's awesome. But even if you draft online right now, you can set your lineup and then change it after the game. And again, you got to be very careful if you're drafting on Saturday because we saw 1 year Peyton Manning had like 50 points on Thursday and he jumped up to a first round pick and ended up being a terrible pick. We had Eric Bachman on the Sirius XM show last night. He was talking about the same thing happened with Kareem Hunt. Just be careful with that. But if you draft like the Eagles, the Packers, the Chiefs, or the Ravens defense, you can literally see how many points they score and then put them in your lineup. And if they score negative points, you just go out and pick up a different defense. So that's kind of what I'm doing if I can get away with it on FFPC. Back to what we're doing here. I'm jumping around all over the place. We got running back here. Here we go. And again, for those just joining us, first of all, thank you for joining us. Second of all, go over from Twitter. You can watch on Twitter if you want. You're supporting us either way, but go to YouTube if you want to comment and go to YouTube and hit that like and subscribe and put those notifications on. That's what really helps us and make sure you don't miss any of this stuff. What we're doing today is we're going through and I'm hitting on all the players that I like, especially the ones that are values at ADP, and especially if their values on FFPC. A few of these guys I will mention, like Aaron Rodgers on the last slide, I don't really like, but I have to mention because he's a huge value on FFPC if you like him. Okay. So here are the guys. These guys I all honestly like. Number one here, Josh Jacobs. I wrote a full article on this, fantasyalarm.com. Josh Jacobs, just Google Fantasy Alarm Josh Jacobs, should come up. The reality for this guy is I look at guys like Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, and I like them. I think these are great players. I think these are good offenses, right? And they've both been paid like $40 million to be the starting running back for good offenses, right? Which is also the condition for Josh Jacobs. And people look at Josh Jacobs and they say, oh, well, he was super inefficient last year, but he was also on a terrible team. And Saquon Barkley once was on a terrible team and he was super inefficient. He had 3.7 yards per carry. The whole idea is that he's on a better team and it's going to be better, right? That's the whole deal with Saquon Barkley. But with Josh Jacobs, he goes to a better team that believes in him and paid him a lot of money and got rid of Aaron Jones to have him. And we're saying, oh, well, that it doesn't actually work that way for this player. It works that way for this player, but not for this player. And why is that exactly? I don't know. Saquon Barkley's older than Jonathan Taylor. He's older than Jonathan Taylor, and he's older than Josh Jacobs. He has more touches than Josh Jacobs. And if he doesn't, it's because he's been hurt a bunch of times. He's even hurt right now. He left practice with some back issues. Saquon Barkley did. So I'm not saying, but I'm not, and the thing is, I'm not even saying those are bad picks. I'm saying Josh Jacobs should be going closer to these players. And people will pop in, they'll say, oh, what about Marshawn Lloyd? What about AJ Dillon? I like Marshawn Lloyd. He's fine. He's good. You know what I mean? But these other backs are going to rotate too. And I'm more worried about the mobile quarterbacks in Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts stealing touchdowns than I am about AJ Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd. Last year, Jalen Hurts, with his tush push nonsense, stole 15 touchdowns, 15 rushing touchdowns. That's nearly a touchdown a game. You know who else had a rushing touchdown a game? Anthony Richardson. He had 4 rushing touchdowns in 4 games. Is AJ Dillon going to steal a rushing touchdown a game? Is Marshawn Lloyd going to score 15 rushing touchdowns? Because Jalen Hurts just did. So if you're scared of Marshawn Lloyd, boy, you should be terrified of Anthony Richardson and Jalen Hurts. So Josh Jacobs for me. If you like Barkley and JT, you should also like Jacobs. Draft them all. I like them all. Next on the list, Alvin Kamara. I mean, My goodness, it's a full PPR format. This guy was on pace for 112 targets last year. 112. That would have obliterated everybody else. Okay. He actually finished like third, even though he missed 4 games. And he missed 4 games. And he missed those mostly because of suspension, not because he's hurt. Not only is he a good player, right, that catches a ton of passes, people are like, oh, efficiency, blah, blah, blah. This guy's never had 1,000 rushing yards. When have we ever cared about rushing yards for Alvin Kamara? Why all of a sudden do we care now? We never did. It's all about receptions with this guy. He's the top guy. Kendrick Miller can't even stay healthy to the point where the coach says, if this guy doesn't get out here and practice, he's not going to make the team. All right. Jamal Williams is fine. Taysom Hill will be doing his thing. It doesn't really matter that much because Alvin Kamara is the star. And Clint Kubiak is bringing in like 5 decades worth of rushing prowess going back to his father, Gary Kubiak. He comes over from the 49ers where they have an incredible scheme and they use him the fullback and they have a high end left tackle, right? They have Kyle Juszczyk and Trent Williams. That opens everything up. Mike McDaniel goes to the Dolphins and he goes, that look, everything we did there with Trent Williams and Kyle Juszczyk, I want to do that here. He went out and he got Teron Armstead. He went out and he got Alec Ingold. Now they're doing it over there. Bobby Slowick, he comes over from the 49ers to the Texans. He says, everything we're doing over there, I want to do that over here. He goes out. They have Laramie Tunsil. They bring in fullback Andrew Beck. Now all of a sudden, Devin Singletary is running for nearly 1,000 yards, right? So what happens here? Clint Kubiak goes to the Saints, and what does he say? He says, everything they're doing over there, let's do it over here. They bring in a fullback in Adam Prentice, and they brought in Xander Horvath for a look. They draft a left tackle with their first pick in the draft in Tylesi Fuaga. They are trying to do the same thing. I mean, I don't know how much more I could spell it out, right? It's like that's the plan. It's worked. It worked in San Francisco. It worked in Miami. It worked in Houston. Now the Saints are going to do it. Give me Alvin Kamara at RB15. He could be the RB1 in the league, straight up. Like, would you be shocked? Maybe you'd be surprised, but would you be shocked? Would you look back and be like, oh my God, I can't believe Alvin Kamara was the RB1, a guy who's been the RB1 before, right? Like, that was on pace to catch 112 targets. Of course, he could be RB1. Next one here, David Montgomery, RB20. I mean, that's the thing. ADP 74, RB20. This guy, speaking of the Saints, this could be a 2017 Saints situation where Mark Ingram was there, Adrian Peterson was there, Alvin Kamara was there. And then turns out Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara were so awesome, they said, we don't even need Adrian Peterson. We'll trade him. And Mark Ingram finished as the RB7, and Alvin Kamara finished as the RB3. So Jahmyr Gibbs could be the RB3. That doesn't mean that David Montgomery has to be the RB20. This is an incredible offense. They have an incredible offensive line. They have a good defense all of a sudden, or at least they have good defensive players with Aiden Hutchinson. They're doing their darndest, right? David Montgomery could easily also be an RB1. The good players oftentimes come from the good teams. Running is the luxury of the winning team. Scoring touchdowns is the luxury of the good teams. You look at this team, Jamal Williams scored 17 touchdowns, 17 rushing touchdowns in 17 games for this team in the role that David Montgomery's in. David Montgomery inherited that role last year, and he got hurt in one game and hardly played. In the other games, he scored 13 touchdowns in 13. David Montgomery could just be David Montgomery, which is a good player and a good player on your fantasy team. So David Montgomery at RB20 is silly. And you should draft David Montgomery. You can draft him. Last year, we commentated on a $10,000 buy-in league. The buy-in for this league, not the winner gets $10,000. The buy-in was $10,000. And one of the guys in the league drafted Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery as his RB1 and RB2. And I checked back in with Eric Bachman, and that guy advanced to the next round and made a bunch of money. I don't think he won the whole thing or we would have heard about it, but he advanced to the next round. I mean, these are good players on a good team. And if Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, David Montgomery, I mean, he already has a hamstring. I'm just saying. If Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, it's wheels up. If Dave Montgomery gets hurt, it's wheels up. They can easily be the RB1 in all of football. But these guys could both be RB1s, okay? David Montgomery. Nick Chubb, RB37. I don't really need to go into this one. Everybody knows this situation. There's so many of these where it's like we go into so much detail. I know I'm guilty of it. I'm talking about myself for an hour right now. But you go into all this crazy detail about, here's this and here's that, here's that. Nick Chubb is an easy one. Either he's healthy or he's not. If he comes back healthy the way Brees Hall did last year off an ACL tear, he's one of the best running backs in the league. There's no doubt about it. If his knee didn't get hurt last year, then Nick Chubb would be drafted in the second round, probably the first round, because through 2 games, he had like 170 rushing yards last year. Like, this guy's awesome. So if he comes back and he's Nick Chubb, like, let's say he pulls a Brees Hall. Brees Hall tore his ACL, came back, and was RB2, right? Let's say Nick Chubb does that. He tore his ACL week like 3, right? What's up, Silence? Thanks for popping in, dog. He tore his ACL like week 3, and that was a long time ago. I know it was a gruesome looking injury. I know that it wasn't. He's an older player, but if this guy comes back and he's anything like he was last year, he's going to ruin everything because he's RB 37. Like if you get Nick Chubb at RB 37 and he's Nick Chubb, everything's ruined. So that's why I want to have at least a few shares of Nick Chubb. Maybe I'm not going to draft him in every single one of my leagues in case he doesn't come back and doesn't look good, but I'm definitely going to have him in a couple because it could ruin the league. Next guy I'm looking at here. And again, guys in the chat, feel free to throw in questions, whatever. It's like we're doing whatever we want to do on the show. I'm planting my flags. Well, we're not really planting flags. I'm looking at values that I like. Throw names out there you like. Let me know what's going on, what kind of drafts you got, trades, questions, whatever you got. We're doing it today. We're doing it, whatever you guys want to do. Uh, Next one up, Antonio Gibson. Again, we're talking values. We're not talking flag plants. We're not talking hype picks. Okay. We've already talked about a lot of the sleeper hype picks, the Kamani Vidals, Kamani Code, and Dylan Lobby and all these guys that are getting steamed up. Carson Steele, right? Everybody wants to talk about Carson Steele. Hey, he's got an alligator, right? It's like the guy ran a 4.77 40, and he's probably going to play fullback, but everybody wants to talk Carson Steele. Be very careful with these teams that are very good. Like the 2 teams that went to the Super Bowl last year, the 49ers and the Chiefs. Everyone's like, wow, Josh Dobbs looks good and Carson Steele looks good. It's funny how the teams that went to the Super Bowl have really good second units. Like they have really deep teams. I think that these teams are planning to try and make a deep run. Whereas when the backups for the Patriots get in, it's like, wow, these guys look like trash. Well, yeah, that's because the starters for that team might have a hard time playing against the backups for the 49ers. Look at the Packers could field a second unit of Dontavian Wicks, Malik Heath, Bo Melton, Tucker Kraft, and Marshawn Lloyd. Like that team would probably crush the Patriots, right? So just be careful with all that stuff. Carson Steele is fun. I like stiff arms as much as the next man. He looks cool wearing Anthony Sherman's old number, but just be careful with the preseason hype. Through 2 preseason games in 2018, Chris Warren had 295 yards, and everyone was like, going crazy. He didn't even make the team. All right, so just be careful with preseason. All right, Dante Foreman opinion. What's happening? Assuming you're thinking Devonta Foreman, Fatty. Uh, unless you're talking about unless it's a crazy auto tape for Deontay Johnson. Yeah, Devonta Foreman. The thing is, he got carted off with the from camp earlier this year, but so did recently. So did the speedy guy that came over from the Patriots that escapes me right now. So they're having a tough time over there. I don't really like Foreman because he doesn't catch passes at all. He's got brick hands, man. He's basically at best Jeremy Hill or Jordan Howard, right? And Jerome Ford isn't super exciting either. He's like an Alexander Madison for me. That's why I'm betting on Nick Chubb to just come back. And Nick Chubb is 75% of Nick Chubb. He's better than Foreman. He's better than Jerome Ford. He's better than all these different guys, dude. So don't worry about that. And then, so back to what we were talking about. I don't know why I went on some Carson Steele rant. Antonio Gibson to me, in these really deep formats like FFPC, 20-round draft, if you're doing a 0 RB or hero RB and you need someone that you can potentially put in your lineup for bye weeks or early starts, Antonio Gibson is so secure on that depth chart that people are like, oh, I'm going to draft Jordan Mason and hope Christian McCaffrey gets hurt. Well, you can't start Jordan Mason. There's a world where you might be able to start Antonio Gibson. There's a world where it's Ramondre Stevenson as a starter and Gibson mixing in on pass downs, also maybe returning some kicks. Maybe he can break one off there. But like, after him on the depth chart, it's like Kevin Harris, JaMychal Hasty. They paid Gibbs pretty good money. If JaMychal Hasty beats him out, well, whatever. You can just drop Gibson and pick up JaMychal Hasty. But I think Gibson's going to actually probably catch a few passes. He's a converted, used to be a wide receiver. Everyone talks about it. But At RB 51, he's free, and people doing zero RB end up trying to shoot the moon too much, right? Drafting all these guys like Dylan Laube and Kamani Vidal and all these generic Prince, and then they don't play at all. And now you're like, wait a second, I got to start somebody. Antonio Gibson could be that the guy that you could start at RB 51. And the next one is Justice Hill, right? John Harbaugh, again, God bless him. I wouldn't trust words out of a Harbaugh's mouth, if my life depended on it. But he did say that we treat when everything adds up and everything combines to become the perfect storm, then I will take it at face value, right? So John Harbaugh says that Justin Hill is going to see a lot of playing time. And not only that is he should be considered a starter, not the starter, but a starter, right? Well, then they turn around in the preseason games, every game that Derrick Henry is set out, Justice Hill is set out. So when the starters sit out, Justice Hill sits out. So in that case, he does kind of group him in with the starters. And when you look at Derrick Henry, yes, absolute battering ram, super mega star. He doesn't catch passes. Justice Hill does, right? Derrick Henry could get hurt because he's older. That happens all the time. I'm not saying that he will. I'm not a Dr. Fortune Teller type guy. So I'm not going to say draft Justice Hill because Derrick Henry will get hurt. But if he does, Justice Hill filled in and was basically the starting back this year. No more Gus Edwards, no more J.K. Dobbins. Keaton Mitchell's coming off a serious injury. Okay. So these guys, Gibson and Hill, don't be surprised when you're absolutely scrambling for players. When you go zero RB or hero RB. Sometimes when you go hero RB, your hero RB is Nick Chubb and he gets hurt and you got nothing. Guys like Gibson and Hill might be able to offer a little bit of floor. So there you go. Question here: if you draft Pacheco as your RB1, would you be comfortable? Depending on my build. Depending on my build. If I draft a bunch of wide receivers that are awesome and I get a high-end quarterback and tight end, and Pacheco is my RB1 and my RB2 is also somebody kind of solid, great. I wouldn't go hero RB with Pacheco. If you're drafting Pacheco as your RB1, that means that you took a wide receiver in the first round, and then at the 2 or 3 turn, you took Pacheco and probably another wide receiver. In that case, I would be looking to draft a guy like Jacobs, Kamara, uh, or Joe Mixon, or a or a guy from the David Montgomery, Kenneth Walker, Najee Harris tier. Najee Harris, Jalen Warren's dealing with a hamstring. He might not even be ready for week 1. So I would be comfortable with him as my RB1, but it would make me a little more inclined to have a little more uh, some other solid players mixed in there too. You know what I mean? Because again, it's not like you have a hero RB candidate. So there you go. Definitely gonna get to tight ends here, Braun. The tight end room I'll just hit this one real quick. The tight end room for the Green Bay Packers. I think Luke I think Luke Musgrave is the better pass catcher. I think Tucker Kraft is the better blocker. That puts us at best in a Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz situation. And what happened with those guys is that at a certain point, Dallas Goedert was just as good, if not a better pass catcher than Zach Ertz. But, right? And we can take the running backs off here. But the modern NFL tight end room is a coaching room, right? So when it's a group, right? So the coach, say a tight end coach probably wears glasses like these here. He looks around and he's like, all right, who's gonna do what here, right? And he looks at Luke Musgrave and he's like, all right, you're not gonna block, dude. You're like some championship skier. We're gonna have you play the slot. And then he looks at country boy Tucker Kraft and says, you're a big dog. You're gonna play inline. All right. So for 2 tight end sets, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to have Luke Musgrave coming in block in line so that Tucker Kraft can play slot. That makes no sense, right? Same thing happened with Ertz and Goddard. Same thing happened with rookie Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham got to basically play wide receiver because Cole Kmet's just a better blocker. That's just how it goes. Tucker Kraft maybe could have really made some noise and maybe taken that job and box Luke Musgrave out, but he tore his pec, missed the entire offseason. So I think both guys are going to play. And the real problem there is that they have so many good wide receivers that what's the path for either of those guys to be a top 2 target on the team? Let's say Luke Musgrave were to disappear down a black hole today, and everyone's like, "Where's Luke? He's not here. We got to play without him." Okay, Tucker Kraft is a starting tight end. What does that mean? Is he a top 2 target ahead of Christian Watson, Romeo Dubs, uh, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks? Even if one of those guys gets hurt and Dontavian Wicks goes in, does Tucker Kraft get more targets than Dontavian Wicks? every top 12 tight end last year in full PPR was he either led their team in targets or was second. So for me, I'm just probably not drafting those guys. Hope that helps. So let's get into. I will get to questions as always. Let's get into the wide receivers. I don't know how this show goes by so quick. How is it already 35 minutes? Sweet baby rays. All right, wide receiver values. Again, if those of you just joining us, thanks for popping in. Also, happy Friday. Also, happy draft weekend. It's summertime. It's nice out. Tomorrow is the birthday party for my baby Laney. I couldn't be happier. We're talking football. It's Friday, dude. I mean, come on now. Throw a like, throw a subscribe on there. Let's go. What we're doing today is we're looking at value picks, not necessarily sleepers, hype picks, my flag plants, my ride or die. You know what I mean? Shout out Matthew Berry. These are the guys that I think are great values that I will be selecting in a lot of my big time leagues, in a lot of my leagues like FFPC, which is for the big dogs. Like these are leagues where the buy-in sometimes are 2 grand, 10 grand. You can also buy a league for $35, right? You can get into the FF, the Fantasy Pros Championship is 350, but you can get in for $35. If you use promo code Coop at myffpc.com, they'll give you $25 when you deposit 35. I suggest depositing 45 so you can get two $35 leagues. I've already done the math in advance. Pretty easy. All right. So, but that's where you go when you win a league and you say, wow, I won an FFPC league. I guess I do know what I'm doing. Right. Your buddy from home is like, he wins the hometown league. And he's like, "Oh, I'm the champion." And then you're like, "Oh, well, I actually won this high stakes league uh, at FFPC, so I'm better." There you go, eat it. But anyway, so we're going through and we're looking at value plays. For me, Devontae Adams, wide receiver 11, ADP 29. So not only is this a guy I like, not only is he going in the second round and sometimes even the third round. ADP 29 means third round, right? But this guy's gotten, but on FFPC, he's going cheaper than other platforms. So if you like Adams like I do, FFPC is a no-brainer place to play. And this guy's averaged 10 targets a game over the last 6 years. 10 targets a game over the last 6 years. Are you kidding me? Last 2 years, he got 175 and 180 targets. I mean, this guy could get two fewer targets a game, and that's still 140. And that puts him in the top 12 wide receivers for targets. And he goes wide receiver 11. What? Nuts. The team was terrible last year, right? Aiden O'Connell was the quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo. It was a mess. And Aiden O'Connell was targeting Devontae Adams 33% of the times. Well, Gardner Minshew last year with the Colts was targeting Michael Pittman with his catchable targets 31% of the time. Same game, dude. Just switch the arms out for a better one. So for me, Devontae Adams, yes, wheels up. Obvious pick. Couldn't be any simpler than just take Devontae Adams, who's awesome, who's going to get peppered with targets again with a QB upgrade. And if Minshew face plants, they bring in Aiden O'Connell, right? Who is the same quarterback he had last year, except now a year older and probably a little bit better. I don't know, man. Seems a little too easy for me. Michael Pittman, this one is probably one of the riskier plays on here, but he is a value, right? So the risk obviously is, Anthony Richardson, reconstructed shoulder. Everybody's like, oh, this guy can't throw, he stinks, whatever. But Michael Pittman is a star. This guy plays 100% of the snaps when he's healthy. He had 5 games playing every single snap. If he didn't take that cheap shot hit, he would have led the league in routes run. He has a decent floor based on that alone. He will get a lot of targets. The quality of the targets is up in the air, but I mean, we're talking Gardner Minshew last year, and he still was a great fantasy asset. Wide receiver 22, this guy could easily be wide receiver 1, ADP 50, no problem with Michael Pittman. With Chris Godwin, this is a guy I'm drafting in every single league. And this is where I truly, truly, truly hope my friends from home that are drafting with me tonight are not in here watching. If you are, show yourself. But I don't really care because I'm a man of the people. And the thing is, to beat me, you can have my rankings in the draft. To beat me, you have to build a better team, with risk and reward and all that. You also need to beat me on the wire. You also need to figure out how to trade with me without losing. I mean, I'm usually a pretty fair trader, but I'm always making my team better. I'll make your team better too. That's the thing. So beating me, not that easy, dude. All right. If you want to beat us, get a Fantasy Alarm All Pro membership now, or even just get a copy of the draft guide, right? And you can get into the Discord. If you get the draft guide, you come in the Discord and you can play leagues with us. Hit that promo code there. I'm going to say something right now. Don't tell Howard Bender. Promo code Cooper, COOPER, that gives you 20% off, might still be live. So try that. Give it a try. Shh. Shh. Seriously, though. Shh. I could. Shh. Cooper, promo code Cooper. All right. But yes, go get set up, get that now. You can play with us, play against us. Tons of people in the chat and Mile High Luke. They've been drafting with us all year, so they already know Fatty McFats, right? These guys already know who my rankings are. Toronto Dave, but yeah, I mean, to beat me, it takes more than that. But so Chris Godwin, I'm drafting everywhere. This guy is going back into the slot in the year when he went absolutely crazy in the subsequent years, this guy would play most of his snaps in three wide receiver sets in the slot, and then he would stay on the field and move outside for two wide receiver sets. That is the best job for fantasy football. The all time number one wide receiver season was Cooper Cup, and he ran the fourth most routes of any player from the slot. Last year, the wide receiver one, CeeDee Lamb, who was number three all time behind only Cooper Cup and Jerry friggin' Rice, ran the fourth most routes of any wide receiver from the slot. That is the formula, the formuoli. That is the formula to be the number one wide receiver in fantasy. Chris Godwin might not be the number one wide receiver in fantasy, but wide receiver 33, right? The year before last, he played around 900 snaps. He played 600 in the slot, 300 out wide. That's what we want to see. Last year, for some reason, they switched it up. They had him play 600 out wide, 300 in the slot. Guess what? Those guys are out. They're gone. Now the new guys have come in. They said, hey, you know what we're doing? We're going to put him in the slot. We're going to bring it back to what it was before. We're going to have somebody else, probably Jalen McMillan, on the outside. And Liam Cohen has actually worked with Cooper Cup in the past. So he's like, hey, you know what? We're going to use like Cooper Cup. How's that sound? Chris Godwin himself said, I'm finally healthy. Last year he had a neck injury. He had the knee injury. He said, I'm finally healthy. That sounds real good, coach. Let's do that. I'm real excited for that. I'm real excited too. Wide receiver 33, easy, slam dunk. I don't mind having him as my wide receiver 2 in fantasy. But my wide receiver 3, my wide receiver 4, done deal. Next one, Christian Watson. We get a lot of pushback on this, but the more we go through these preseason games and all these things, it's starting to look more and more like they already know what they like. They like Watson and Dubs on the outside with Reed in the slot. And the next man up is Dontavian Wicks. That's the way it's been. I know Wicks has gotten a lot of steam, but he's not really getting a lot of hype from them. He's not really getting that kind of playing time. I think Christian Watson could have a Nico Collins-like season. Nico Collins last year was being drafted like wide receiver 40 or 50, and he finished wide receiver 12. Why? Because he was hurt 2 years in a row and only had like 400 yards, and then he had a good quarterback, and he blew up like crazy all over the place. Christian Watson could easily do that this year. Last year, when he was healthy, games from like week 13, 3 to 13, he led the league in, little stupid things like snaps and targets and yards and touchdowns and air yards and target share. Just little, meaningless things like that. This guy could be the number one target for one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Easy enough. Well, I mean, I just don't, me personally, I don't really draft Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell because all three of them are going before any wide receiver from the Packers. And I think that the top three wide receivers are Jaden Reed, Romeo Dubs, and Christian Watson. So pretty easy for me. Next guy, Rashid Shaheed. He's cheaper over here than he is on a lot of other sites, especially when you compare him to like Underdog and some of the real steamed up wide receiver sites. Rashid Shaheed could easily be one of the guys in two wide receiver sets. I talked earlier about Clint Kubiak bringing in the fullback and using a lot of two wide receiver sets, right? Fullback, two tight end sets. That's why there's no wide receiver 3 in San Francisco because Kyle Juszczyk plays like the entire game, plays half the game. Kyle Juszczyk and blocking tight end Charlie Warner combined to play more snaps than Brandon Ayuk. They obviously played more snaps than Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel got hurt. But like that's how they do it. Look how many snaps Alec Ingold played for the Dolphins. That's why they don't have a wide receiver 3. And the same thing with the Texans using the fullback. A lot of Nico Collins, a lot of Tank Dell. I think it's going to be Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Every game that Chris Olave has been held out for, Rashid Shaheed's been held out for. My goodness, this guy is explosive. He could be the next Tyreek Hill. I'm just saying. So very cool there. And then after that, I do like taking stabs on the Patriots' potential top pass catcher. So that's the theme. You look at CJ Stroud, right? CJ Stroud was the QB 28 in ADP last year. If you thought that CJ Stroud was going to be the QB 9, then congratulations. You were super right, and everyone else is super wrong. Everybody else. Because even if you were drafting him, you weren't drafting him that high and you weren't ranking him that high. It would have been stupid to do so. right? You didn't have to do it. That's the whole thing. That's the balance of rankings and why I don't like linear rankings. I think they're making you worse at fantasy football, but that's a discussion for another day. You you have to balance ADP versus your thoughts. Because if you had ranked Nico Collins at wide receiver 12, where he finished, and drafted him at wide receiver 12, congratulations. That would have been a terrible pick because he was going wide receiver 50. You could have got him much cheaper. So even if you were exactly right, you didn't generate any value. And that's the point is that what if Drake May is good? What if Bo Nix is good? What if, you know, Jaden Daniels or any of the other rookies are good? Because CJ Stroud was good. And what happened with that is Nico Collins and Tank Dell were insane values. So what if Drake May is good? Or even Jacoby Brissett is good? Who's gonna benefit? Could be Demario Douglas. Probably not going to be KJ Osborne or Jalen Rager. Those guys are boring. We know who they are right now. Uh, it could be Jalen Polk. It could be Javon Baker. Sorry, still trying to correct my brain on that. It is Javon. That is official from the Patriots handbook. Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk. Burn that into your brain before you say it wrong because I've done that too many times, saying guys' names wrong for like 3 months, and then it's so hard to come back from it. Javon. Remember that name because that guy is awesome. Contested catch dude, just a baller. And he slid in the draft for character issues, which I'd rather take a shot on a character issue guy like a Tyreek Hill that slid, or an Antonio Brown who was crazy, or a Brandon Marshall who fell to the fourth round because he had like bipolar and all those issues. I'd rather take guys that slide for off-field issues but are good on the field than guys that slid because they're not good at football. So there you go. That's the crew. Real quick, got another question. Sergio, fifth pick out of 12 snake draft. It's one RB. I don't know what that is. Sorry, we're doing tight ends next, so don't worry about that. Any other questions? Congrats. Yeah, happy birthday to Lainey, dude. Why I'm so far behind the chat? I'm an idiot. Yes, happy birthday to my daughter. If you would like to get Lainey a present, then go to fantasyalarm.com and buy yourself a present. Get yourself a copy of the draft guide. That supports us. That helps us out. That helps me personally out. I'm not kidding. This is my job. Like, I love doing these shows and giving this stuff away for free. You get all this info and more and my rankings. I call it so when I bash linear rankings, I'm not just saying that, I'm doing it. I have the dynamic tier rankings that have guys rate like two different columns based on upside, downside, and I have them color coded based on whether I like them or not at ADP. Guys in yellow means they're okay at ADP. Guys at green, I will draft ahead of ADP, like Chris Godwin. Guys in red means I'm not drafting them at ADP only if they really slot. So if you want to help me out, hit that QR code, get a copy of the draft guide now. And if you use promo code Cooper, I think it might still be active. You get 20% off that purchase. So, and again, I can get in trouble for saying that, but I don't really care. It's my daughter's birthday. So go check that out. Back to the chat real quick, and then we'll do tight ends. I do take Godwin over Deontay Johnson. I like them both. Get them both. Draft Godwin, reach for Godwin, then draft Deontay Johnson at ADP. A lot of targets to be had there. Chris Godwin caught more passes than Mike Evans last year. That sounds crazy, but it happened. Brad is right. The All Pro is the key to season success. Promo code Cooper gets you 20% off any product. But if you want to get All Pro right now, I wouldn't even use promo code Cooper. Right now, we have 40% off for the entire year. So forget 20% off, 40% off for the year, or promo code Let's Go gets you 50% off for the month. So if you go All Pro, and I'll throw that up there right now, like you get access to everything, the Discord, all sports, all the DFS articles, literally everything. If you're an All Pro member, and the guys in the Discord know, I do my best to just answer every single question. If you drop a question in Coop's Corner on the Discord, I will personally answer that. If you drop it anywhere else, you'll get an answer from one of our analysts. But just do that. But yes, or you can just get the draft guide that's got on my rankings. You keep Godwin on this list if his ADP is 59. Yes, at NF. So at good point, Adam. These are FFPC values. I think Chris Godwin's a value in every format. I have him ranked within my top 24. So I don't think he's going there on any site. So on NFFC, I draft him as well. Absolutely draft him all over the place. I love Christian Watson as well. Chris Wilson, I think Godwin is washed. You know what? Maybe. I mean, last year he led the team in catches, and he was playing with a neck injury where he couldn't turn left or right, and he had a knee injury in the playoffs. But maybe he's washed. Maybe some guys Like Mike Evans can play when they're 30 something years old. Maybe Chris Godwin as a 20 something year old is dead. I don't think so though. Need for Shaheed, I'm loving it. What position do I like drafting the most? I like drafting running backs the most because I believe in my ability to find late round wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends. I believe in that ability. I don't necessarily enjoy the scraping and scrapping and fab dropping, trying to get Kyron Williams and these guys off the wire. I don't like having to do that. It's not doesn't play to my skill set. If you are amazing at that, then go zero RB and hero RB and lean into your own skills. All right. I lean into tight end. I wait on tight end a lot of time because I'm contractually obligated to find breakout tight ends and find value tight ends. So I lean into my own skill set. This game, once you get to a level that's like beyond just looking at the rankings on various consensus ranking sites, I'm not going to name any. Once you get beyond that and you become a real player and you really start, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about everybody in this chat and everybody on Twitter. If you have commented on a show like this or tweeted about football within the last year, you're in the top like 5% of fantasy gamers. Most people don't tweet, they don't care, they pick up a magazine, right? Once you get to that level of gamer where you're actually hanging out and watching these shows, you should kind of try and get away from linear rankings, use them as a guide, but focus on team building, focus on floor and upside and different strategies, yin and yang tight end, zero RB, all that stuff. So, little 2 cents on that. If I had to pick only one of the Pats wide receivers, I would take Jalen Polk. He was drafted in the second round. The wide receiver coach, Tyler Hughes for the Patriots, right? Uh, and we can get rid of that. Don't get rid of me. What the heck? The wide receiver coach of the Patriots, Tyler Hughes. Okay. This guy worked for the Patriots. Then he went to work for Washington Huskies as a offensive control coordinator. And then he came back to be the Patriots wide receiver coach. And then they drafted Jalen Polk from the Huskies. All right. I doubt they did that without speaking to Tyler Hughes. I doubt they would have used a second round pick, which is well above where people projected him to go, if Tyler Hughes didn't believe that Jalen Polk was awesome. And folks don't realize that the offensive coordinator is not the person who decides who plays. The head coach does not decide who plays. Can you imagine the head coach walking around the sideline being like, you, and you, get in for this play. And then every single play, he's like, you. Like, no, of course not. The offensive coordinator doesn't have time for that either. He's trying to figure out what play to call. The position coaches are in charge of that. The running back coach decides the mixes of running backs. That's why we like Austin Eckler, because his running back coach is Anthony Lynn, who is his head coach with the Chargers, right? But this guy who is tied to Jalen Polk, who almost certainly vouched for him, gets to decide the rotation of wide receivers. Of course, the talent might not be there. Of course, he might face plant. But this guy, Tyler Hughes, is now tied to the success of Jalen Polk. No question. So for me, he's going to get every opportunity to look good. And maybe he will get every opportunity to make Tyler Hughes look good. Maybe they'll all look bad. Who knows, right? Draft guides for Laney. Let's go. Yes, don't fall for ADP in the middle rounds. Just get the guys that you like in those places. Love you guys. Thank you guys for hanging out. If I can, last question, then we're going to get to tight ends. What position do you like drafting from the 12 spot? I like in a 12-person draft. I like drafting from the 6th spot. If I can pick any spot for myself, I will pick 5 or 6. And what I do there, especially if it's 6, for instance, I take one of 6 players, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers. I take one of Christian McCaffrey, Brees Hall, or Bijan Robinson. At wide receiver, I take one of CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, or Jamar Chase. Those are super duper mega stars. And Jamar Chase, I think, is going to play a lot more slot this year than he has in the past. Joe Burrow's healthy. I don't think he's going to hold out the entire year. We saw what happened with Le'Veon Bell. People don't do that anymore. I'm just going to take whoever's there of those guys. All right. And you have to make a decision if somebody drafts like Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4 or 5 or whatever. If that case, then Jamar Chase is the odd man out for me. And I'll take one of the running backs, or I'll take CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill. All those players are just incredible. So 6 is the spot we want. All right, let's do tight ends, dude. Let's go. Let's wrap this puppy up. Tight ends. All right, here we go. Tight end. This is FFPC is tight end premium, but these guys I like across the board. It doesn't matter the website. Okay. Mark Andrews at tight end 5 is criminal. This guy could easily be the number one tight end in all of fantasy football. He has been before. In fact, he has a top 5 season of all time in fantasy football, right? With this quarterback. And it's him and Zay Flowers and who? Rashad Bateman and uh Nelson Aguilar. Come on now. And Isaiah Likely is going to play more. He's not going to play instead of Mark Andrews. You don't put Mark Andrews on the bench so Isaiah Likely can play. They're going to play at the same time. Isaiah Likely is going to take a wide receiver out of the game. Patrick Ricard takes a wide receiver out of the game as a fullback. It's all good for Mark Andrews, right? They're not going to all of a sudden take targets away from Andrews to give them to Likely. That's crazy. And the fact of the matter is that you don't have to handcuff Likely. You don't have to put him on the bench. But in leagues with Fab, if something happens to Andrews, you do have the possibility of going out and grabbing Isaiah Likely and plugging him right in. If Sam Laporta gets hurt, you can't start Brock Wright or Shane Zylstra. If Trey McBride goes down, I guess we would take a look at Elijah Higgins, but like you're not gonna start Tip Ryman. Like none of these guys, even Travis Kelsey to Noah Gray is a mega downgrade, whereas Isaiah Likely was a top 5 tight end last year. So I'm taking Mark Andrews at tight end 5 for sure. I honestly, if you check the rankings, you'll be surprised how high I have Mark Andrews. But if we got to get the draft guide for that for my daughter's birthday. Yeah, I'll take Mark Andrews all day. Basically, in that range, I don't really take a lot of Laporta or Kelsey. I don't even like go out of my way to take Mark Andrews if McBride and Kincaid are there. I'll take whoever's cheapest of those three, but if Mark Andrews is the cheapest, I'll take it. And if push comes to shove and I'm on the clock and all three of those guys are there, I'm taking Mark Andrews. How about that? And oftentimes, based on that ADP, you can draft Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. And now you're stacking, baby. Now you're rocking. Skinny, dude, Skinny knows I hate Taysom. That's why he's doing that. Don't worry about that, dude. No Taysom talk. He shouldn't be a tight end. I'm not getting in there. I'm not going there. You can't make me do it. No Taysom Hill talk. Brock Bowers at tight end 11. Look, we have to respect the possibility that this guy might just be built different. I think that's a stupid saying, but it is stupid, but it's popular for a reason. Derrick Henry might be built, but Derrick Henry is obviously built different than most people. He's an absolute moose. Brock Bowers is like basically stronger Jordy Nelson, and it's clear what they want to do. They're going to have him play wide receiver. Michael Mayer is going to be the inline tight end, right? Mark Andrews, the guy with the picture on the screen there, ran 85% of his routes from a wide receiver spot. That's why he's so goddamn good in fantasy. He's a wide receiver that we can start at tight end. Okay. And that's what Brock Bowers is going to be. Michael Mayer is going to be inline. It's going to be Devontae Adams, Brock Bowers, and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers, very boring pick, odd man out here. So we have to respect that upside. I don't like just taking him as my only tight end, but if I take two tight end, if I take Brock Bowers, I'll take another tight end later. You got to give yourself a chance at upside. This guy has just destroyed every level of football he's ever been at. He has also run the ball. Like he had like 5 rushing touchdowns. He had a 75-yard rushing touchdown in college. He won the John Mackey Award for the best tight end in football twice. Like this guy's just a star. So, you got to consider him. All right. Pat Fryermuth, I have a full article up on Pat Fryermuth, why I love him so much. As long as the Brandon Ayuk trade doesn't go through, I think he's going to be a value. Arthur Smith, 173 targets to the tight ends last year. 90 of them went to Kyle Pitts, which is the number we need to hit to have upside. And this team doesn't have a Jonnu Smith. Also, Pat Fryermuth doesn't have a knee injury like Kyle Pitts had last year. So, give me all the Pat Fryermuth. Russell Wilson does throw over the middle of the field. Russell Wilson did throw 90 targets to Jimmy Graham. He threw 10 touchdowns to Jimmy Graham. Like, it's just he had good wide receivers. That's why you throw to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. If this team had Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, then we wouldn't have Pat Fryermuth ranked high. If this team had how was Russell Wilson supposed to throw to the tight end last year? Greg Dulcich got hurt, and they had Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. Was he supposed to force it to Adam Trotman? No, of course not. Of course he can throw over the middle. He threw more passes between the numbers than he did outside the numbers in virtually every season of his career. His passer rating was like 100, and he's fine. So Pat Fryermuth, awesome, good. It's George Pickens and Pat Fryermuth, and then who? Like if you're not betting on Pat Fryermuth, who are you betting on? Calvin Austin. Roman Wilson has not been healthy. I don't think he's played a single preseason game. Van Jefferson was with Arthur Smith last year. He did nada, did nothing. They're going to use a lot of blocking tight ends like Darnell Washington and Michael Pruitt. That's great for Pat Fryermuth. Last year, the Falcons, you had Drake London playing virtually the whole game. The next highest playing wide receiver was Kadarrell Hodge with 33% of the snaps. What? Stupid. But if it's stupid in favor of the tight end, I like it. So we're cool with that. Jalen Warren's also kind of banged up. So, I mean, I'll throw that in there. Let's get this wrapped up here. There you go. Toronto Dave knows the Hunter is going to be in the hen house all year. This guy is good versus man to man, always has been, right? He can win in man to man, and that's why he's so good in the end zone and the red zone. This guy had 6 touchdowns on a team that threw 16. Okay. Some of these teams are throwing 40 touchdown passes. This team threw 16, he got 6. He can already do that. The thing is, the Patriots last year threw 0 tight end screens, not one, not a single one, not to Mike Gesicki, not to Hunter Henry. All right, 0. Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator this year with the Browns, they threw the second most in the entire league, second most, behind only Evan Engram and the Jaguars. Doug Peterson, no one's gonna throw more tight end screens than him. You're allowed to be second though. So of course he might not get 21 like David Njoku did, but you give him 10 more manufactured touches, free receptions, 5 more. Now all of a sudden we've got a guy that's more reliable. And maybe they do call a lot of those tight end screens. So Hunter Henry, we're doing that. Greg Dulcich, okay. Again, last year he was in line to be big slot. Everybody, the misconception is people like Sean Payton called him a joker, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's Alvin Kamara. He's going to get carries." Blah blah blah. No, no, no. Joker to Sean Payton means a guy that plays out of position to create a mismatch. Okay. He also called Jimmy Graham a joker, right? So Alvin Kamara is a joker because he's a running back that can play wide receiver. Jimmy Graham was a joker because he's a tight end that can play wide receiver. Greg Dulcich, he called him a joker because he's a tight end that can play wide receiver. He played wide receiver in high school and college. He's a converted wide receiver, right? The first 3 drives last year, he got targeted twice, then he got hurt, and the season was pretty much over. This guy could come out and play big slot for this team, at which point he could easily be a top 2 target on the team, behind only Cortland Sutton. Who's it going to be? Josh Reynolds, Tim Patrick? These are journeymen, right? Marvin Mims is not even playing in the. Sean Payton does not like Marvin Mims. Who you got? Michael Bandy? Chat, tell me right now, who's going to be the second target on the team behind Cortland Sutton? I'd love to know. I think it's going to be Greg Dulcich. It's not going to be Adam Trautman. Adam Trautman is an inline blocking tight end. In 2019, Nick Boyle was the starting tight end for the Ravens. Okay. He played over 700 snaps. Mark Andrews, the guy on the screen there with the ball in his hand, he played 495 snaps. He finished as the tight end 5 in fantasy football. Mark Andrews did. Even though he wasn't the starting tight end because he ran all the routes. He was on the pass downs. That could be Greg Dulcich. Adam Trautman does not. Don't worry about Adam Trautman. Last year in the second half of the year, Lucas Kroll ran more routes than Adam Trautman. Kroll, Warrior King. If Greg Dulcich goes down, Lucas Kroll could be in that role. Or maybe Lucas Kroll wins the job. I don't know. But keep an eye on that situation. Scamp is right. Tim Patrick is the only legit threat. If they put Tim Patrick in that role, it sucks because we can't start Tim Patrick at tight end. And we've actually seen that before. Chan Gailey, totally different offense, totally different situation. But Chan Gailey would use big slot. He used Tony Gonzalez like that. And Tony Gonzalez ran the second most slot routes in the entire league behind only Hines Ward was the tight end 1 in fantasy football. When Chan Gailey got to the Jets, though, he used Eric Decker as the big slot. And then Eric Decker had 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns or whatever. But that didn't help us at tight end. And then when he went to the Dolphins, he used Mike Gesicki in that role, and Mike Gesicki was a tight end 6. So big slot is a great job. I hope bring Chan Gailey out of retirement. I want him to come back. All right, Hayden Hurst. Here's another situation. People say Will Disley is going to start. Who cares? Will Disley ran a 4.87 40, and then he tore his ACL, and then he tore his Achilles, and then he suffered a broken leg that Pete Carroll described as one he had never seen before. Will Disley is not going to do anything for fantasy. He's there to block. Will Disley himself says, I work for Gus Edwards. That's what he said. So don't worry about Will Disley. The best pass catching tight end on the team is Hayden Hurst. This team lost the number 1 pass catcher on the team, Keenan Allen. The number 2 pass catcher on the team, Mike Williams. the number 3 pass catcher on the team, Austin Eckler, and the number 4 pass catcher on the team, Gerald Everett. It is wide open over there for Hayden Hurst to be the guy. And in your very, very super deep dynasty leagues, I'm not kidding. When I say Stone Smart, we kind of joke about him being a meme or whatever. This guy's a converted quarterback that converted to wide receiver, that converted to tight end. He had a 51-yard touchdown last year. Just keep an eye on that name. Lucas Kroll and Stone Smart are the two deepest guys I'm stashing in Dynasty. That's it, though, everybody. That's it for me. We went over an hour. I don't know how these solo shows sometimes go over an hour. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you guys for hitting the like button. Thank you for hitting the subscribe, the notifications. All that is how you can support us for free. And I could not thank you more because it allows us to do what we do, what we love, which is talk about football and help you win. If you want to help us even further, go out and get a copy of the draft guide right now. That supports us. It keeps us doing what we do. It supports me. It supports Howard Bender. It supports the radio show. It supports all of us. It supports my daughter Lainey. Her birthday party tomorrow. Like, if you go out and buy a draft guide, DM me on Twitter or anywhere, and I'll make sure I get you set up with the Discord. And of course, you can ask whatever questions you want because you're supporting us and you're a star. So thank you guys so much for that. Last thing, I'm also tonight. If you want some more insights, I'll be on the Sirius XM show with Howard Bender, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going through draft mistakes tonight. So these are the players I really like. If you want to learn about the mistakes to avoid, tune in with us 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, channel 87. Hang out, call in, do all that. And please, above all else, above all that stuff, please crush your drafts this weekend. Destroy your friends and foes in fantasy football. That would be the one thing that would mean the most to me. Go out, draft some of the guys we mentioned today,